everyone, I'm Bunny, and today on Otome Rambles, I'll be talking about Matsurika no Ke, Ten Main Iden. Before we begin, I'd like to give some short disclaimers, so feel free to pause the video to read them if you would like, and if not, let's get on to the video. This story takes place in a world where humans, mortals, and sacred beasts live and breathe. The Matsurika girl sings to the fireflies today. With piercing eyes, she is the one who brings forth the fire that connects the lives of her clan, a connoisseur of jewels. When she comes of age at Keisetsu, all causes and effects begin to come full circle. This is the story of those who have left no name in official history. Matsurika no Ke was released on February 29, 2024 with a 0D rating. It's a mythical high fantasy set in ancient China with a more somber tone. It is written by Ririka, who we all know for her work on Cupid Parasite, and illustrated by Hasamoto Ryo. Long ago, 4 evil mythical beasts wreaked havoc on the earth, roaming and pillaging as they pleased. Powerless, humans lived in total fear, until a saint descended the heavens, Ko-Unyo. He joined hands with 4 sacred beasts to defeat the evil that plagued the land. After that, Unyo established Gekka no Kuni, becoming its first ever king, and solidifying the Ko dynasty. It is said that the blood of one of the sacred beasts, Oryu, flows through his descendants' veins till this day. However, Gekka no Kuni isn't the only place in this story, nor its star. Hidden amongst the Matsurika blossoms in the mountains lies a strange village. It is said that the god who oversees this land, Keisei-sama, loathes the flames of fire and denies its people the ability to ignite it, a place where fireflies light the night instead of lamps, and where its inhabitants must never step foot out of. Matsurika Village. A girl blessed with a special eye and a beautiful voice, Naya. Naya lives in the secluded Matsurika village as its one and only jewel appraiser, a skill she acquired through the Keigan, which is a special eye inherited randomly amongst the women in the village. Despite being forbidden to leave their nook of the mountains, Naya carries a deep love towards her peaceful homeland, accepting her role as a woman of Matsurika village, and she has no desire to leave any of it behind. The son of the village chief, with a crush on Naya that everyone knows about but her. Hei, voiced by Nobuhiko Okamoto, is your typical protective childhood friend who'll be fighting for his life to get out of the friend zone, even suffering some occasional humiliations to covet Naya's attention. Hei's quite popular amongst the girls in their small village, but it's obvious who he has his heart set on, though something does seem to be holding him back. A traveling merchant who has a serious inclination to flattery, aka the flirt, Ryo, voiced by Seiichiro Yamashita, is the only outsider allowed into Matsurika village as part of the fire trade. With him, he brings all sorts of curious goods and stories of places unknown to Naya and the other villagers. It's all smiles and playful words with Ryo, but his face darkens when he thinks no one's watching. Despite the grounded and regal title of First Crown Prince, it seems like all he can do is have his head in the clouds. Ko Seirin, voiced by Shinosuke Tachibana, is the soft-hearted and soft-spoken inheritor of the throne. Confined to the palace's walls, Seirin passes his time alone save for his winged companions. Painfully aware of the distance between him and others, all Seirin can do is give a courteous and understanding smile wherever he goes. Let's go, my favorite little angry man! Ku and I, voiced by my other goat, Shun Horie. And can I just say, Otome, thank you for employing my man once again. It was getting serious out here for me, truly. Anywho, despite his young age, Endai leads the Ku family, one nearly as powerful as the king himself, and serves as the first crown prince's tutor. Endai is pragmatic nearly to a fault, sparing no unnecessary emotions to anything or anyone. A lone wolf in theory, but not in practice, who's pretty choosy with his words. Zebenera, voiced by Wataru Hatano, is the current ruler of the White Wolf tribe, who live even farther from society than those of Matsurika village, in the ruthless snowy mountains. He's a stern, strong leader who values his pack and the history of his people above all else. Half of the 6 routes are locked from the start, and the first 3 can be played in whatever order strikes your fancy, as said by the devs. A secret route unlocks after completing your first route and can be played at any point after. My order was as follows, and I personally felt like it revealed everything pretty naturally. Zebenera, Serin, Ruo, Secret, Endai, Pei. Each route has 5 chapters and 3 endings, all of which contain CGs. The Shinzen Shusetsu, an ending that follows tradition or duty, Meizen Shusetsu, an ending that doesn't follow tradition or duty, and the Uzen Shusetsu, the bad end baby. According to creator comments, the player is free to choose which is their best end, which I think is a pretty unique system. That being said, due to all the Shinzen Shusetsu ends taking place at the very ends of the routes, they do provide more lore than the others. This made me internalize them as the best ends a teensy bit, but that's not to say they were always my favorite. I'll be going through the routes in the order in which I played them. Whisked away to the icy and foreign mountains of the White Wolf tribe as its ruler's bride, Naya must adjust to her newfound life as a member of the pack, and the new responsibilities and tribulations that come with it. Zebenera's route started quite rocky for me, as most of the first chapter is Naya taking life-altering cataclysmic L's until a pretty uncomfortable climax at the end of the chapter. I completely get what they're going for, but it was just a bit of a bump for me. But we truck on. From then, we learn a lot about the White Wolf tribe and its abundant and rich history. But I have to say, I felt like some of its connection to Naya really leaned #JustMC things. Though, to be fair, Zebenera's route is only the tip of the iceberg in this regard, so I don't hold it against him. As for the pacing, the audience was constantly reminded of the character's stakes through mostly verbal exchanges rather than more intense pinch points. As a result, I felt like the route meandered a great deal until pretty far into it. I may have found the story hard to stay invested in at times, but I do think Zebenera's route is very moving and refreshing in its notion that there are various ways to leave a legacy and have a family. It was honestly such a pleasant surprise. Zebenera and Naya's relationship starts out of pure necessity, but soon evolves into 2 people loving each other despite their duties. I initially found the romance a bit unnatural due to sudden and jarring shifts in maturity. This only lasted the first bit, as the romance was trying to find its footing though. After that, it was pretty smooth sailing. Zebenera is a calm, caring, and earnest individual as expected from a ruler, and his discovery of love and considering traditions with more nuance was overall a worthwhile journey, just not totally my style. Serin takes in Naya as an esteemed guest at the imperial court. Naya quickly grows close to the prince, but friendship is not the only thing that awaits her within the court's walls. Everybody get ready for a court drama! The beginning of this route does some required world building while simultaneously building the friendship between our 2 leads, before diving into its plot. The Imperial Court is teeming with conflict. Watching Serin, a first crown prince in name but hardly in power, grapple with these issues alongside Naya made for a consistently engaging route for me. Personally, it checked off boxes and things I like to see in historical stories: political intrigue, royal drama, war, and romance. In addition, I thought Serin's journey in gaining confidence, drive, and purpose was incredibly heartfelt. I did feel like the villain weighed the route down though. He was just too over the top for my taste. The second they were finally out of the picture and the spotlight turned to the secondary villain, I was cheering. The general setup of the romance kind of fell in line with Zebenera's, so there are similar levels of in that regard, but I prefer this execution. The 2 had a solid friendship, and at least found solace in one another before the plot required them to enter a relationship, which turned genuine pretty quickly. However, Endai and Serin. Stay safe out there, Naya, but they are endgame in my mind, body, and soul. During the route's twists and turns, we learn just how much Endai means to Serin, but not as much the other way around, since Endai's so straight-laced and tight-lipped. The Shinzen Shusetsu end had me going through it, and cemented my love for these 2. This route builds the perfect foundation to explore the other side of the relationship in Endai's route, but I'm getting a little ahead of myself here. Naya finds herself imposing on Matsurika Village's friendly little fire merchant. the two have pasts they'd like to overcome, but where might that take them? If his charming, smiling, cheeky little Joe-san wasn't sign enough that he's the type to take you to the lowest point of your life, well, here's the formal announcement. You can call me a pro climber though, because I was a fan. Duo's route works the best as a standalone story since it ultimately has minor relevance to the whole shebang. What it instead offers is a sense of adventure that makes the world feel so much larger. The story very naturally took the player to several places, with conflict at every major change of scenery. And in retrospect, the conflicts in Duo's route were sort of refreshing considering the sexual overtones of most of the conflicts from the other routes. Duo is constantly at odds with himself. He is painfully aware of this, and through LIPOVs, we get a window into that. I've really enjoyed his stumbling journey to finally renounce the self-proclaimed title of the bad guy that he's held over his own head for years. A title that prevented him from appreciating what he's had and what he's gained with Naya by his side. I like the destructive sense of grief Duo and Naya shared that they both learned to lay to rest and thus bonded over. Naya's, of course, still felt less explored. In addition, I'd have appreciated more long-lasting strife between the pair considering certain events that took place early in the route. With little reference to it afterwards, it felt a bit shallow despite the characters informing us otherwise. All that aside, I was quite invested in watching Duo reluctantly fall in love since it went against his way of living. A mysterious person saves Naya from a life or death situation. With time shared, an uncanny sense of connection that she can't quite identify emerges within her. You see, Secret Boy is practically the poster boy for my type. Super meek, doting, loyal, and oh so baby girl. Unfortunately, the way his route played out was not. Like in some other routes, our couple stays in one spot for the majority of the time. But with his inability to properly verbally communicate, Naya ruminating on the same things from the routes before, and the several mundane buffer scenes, the stagnancy of this route is so much more palpable. In contrast to its pacing, the execution of major plot developments while adding valuable context to the world were rushed and sacrificed logical reasoning and character continuity in an effort to create dramatic highs. This hit an all-time peak at the conclusion of the route, where despite my efforts to keep taking this storyline seriously, I just started laughing because they had fully lost me. On the bright side, I think Naya and Secret Boy were kinda cute at least. This route kinda reminds me of those cut videos where two strangers who low-key don't have anything in common stay in a box for several hours to see if they fall in love. But at least they bonded in that little box. Still, I wouldn't say this route has no redeeming qualities. Despite Naya's central conflict being somewhat of old news, I think it's dealt with in a way that gives her way more closure here comparatively. I found the general takeaways from the lore really enriching despite some of its execution. A shame that all of the good moments were eclipsed by the not so good moments for me. Pour one out for my boy. Endai takes it upon himself to add Naya to his long list of responsibilities at the Imperial Court, but watchful eyes may have a thing or two to say about that. After many opining for this man and hyping him to high heaven, finally, the moment I had been waiting for. Endai. The first half of this route was kind of epic. Shun Horie's voice blasting through my TV speakers every 3 seconds, my favorite tropes ever getting thrown at my face, more Endai's heading lore. Life was great, but like every family get-together that's going too good, here came the in-laws. To be frank, a couple of major points of conflict, villains aside, had me like,
oh brother, this guy stinks!
Like the ones preceding it and succeeding it. Endai's route heavily deals with the overarching story of the game, but I ended up pretty lukewarm on the plot after the halfway point. I loved Endai as an ally, but felt like Naya's gratitude towards him was strangely overstated in the romantic development. I had a hard time believing she was in love with him rather than just feeling indebted to him, and fearful of other grimmer prospects. Some of her dialogue also directly gave me that impression as well, unfortunately. I did think they were cute together in the ends, though. It's finally the yearning childhood friend's turn to be the hero in Naya's downtrodden tale. Or is it? Fei's route ties together and gives a new meaning to the rest of the routes. In doing so, it also answers the accumulating unclarities regarding Naya's background. This is great. That is, until this is done via a chapter-and-a-half long flashback, which they then also use in an attempt to almost recharacterize our MC, then this is a little less great. But shout out to that flashback. That was great stuff. I wanted a whole game of just that. The romance between Naya and our ally is of a mutual denial of each other's identities up until the last moments of the route, which made for some really awkward romantic scenes. As for Naya herself, she is an extra bit of a mess, but I can't fault her for it considering what she's been through in this route in particular. Near the route's end, Naya muses to herself and the audience what to call her and her ally. That a relationship like theirs had no name. And well, girl, y'all had me floored because I didn't know what to call it either. I like the general concept of eternal and enduring love, but I can't say I like the direction the route took. The romance and the plot were terribly rushed due to extraordinary circumstances between Naya and the ally, and using a lengthy flashback as a prominent method of storytelling. These things just disrupted the flow of the route, in my opinion. I've already stated this in my disclaimer, but just another reminder since my overall thoughts on this game aren't super positive, as you can probably guess. I am not urging you to make any sweeping conclusions based solely on my words. I'm only offering up my analysis and experience with the game. An overarching problem I had with Matsurika was its tendency to oversell aspects of its story to prove a point, which would end up having the opposite effect for me. A theme planted early on is that humans are cruel beings to those they view as the villain, much worse than monsters. This is an amazing idea to explore considering the whole untold histories angle the game is going for, but when you overuse something, it quickly loses its meaning. In trying to showcase this world's cruelty, sometimes it felt like almost everyone would operate on pure gut reaction rather than critical thinking, and having to see several almost cartoonish reiterations of these things was honestly tiring and lackluster after a point. Things like this made some conflicts and even villains hard to take seriously. It'd be off to claim misogynistic behavior and way of thinking was never contested in the game, but I would say there's still an over-reliance on it for conflict. Due to Matsurika's historical setting, it's easy to pardon always aiming for these low-hanging fruits to initiate or further spur conflict in a story, but to me, it leans uninspired to fall back on the most extreme examples of these things constantly. Somewhat fittingly, considering the conclusion of the game, Naya largely lacks a sense of self outside of serving her village. There was potential for a more defined personality that mostly remained as just unfulfilled potential in the long run. Nonetheless, I was pretty chill with her in the first half of the game. By the locked routes, my interest in her flatlined fast. Despite putting her in the center of it all, this is never Naya's story. In fact, the most noteworthy moments of the game usually had little to do with her. Her character arc mirrors the one in the route before it, with little variation, and is still largely upstaged and outwritten by the allies. I understand that the devs created her with the intention of her being passive, and I've rocked with passive MCs before, but I feel like Naya's frequent refusal to do anything if not out of pure necessity made her a very uninteresting protagonist. In a story that needed her to be memorable, to live up to the plethora of reveals surrounding her character, Naya was, unfortunately, painfully forgettable. Lastly, by the final route, I felt like the game had failed to connect all of its current cast and their stories to its overall narrative in a meaningful way. While explicitly informing the player how each ally played into this larger erased history as the curtains closed, I was left with the feeling that some of these ties felt inconsequential or even contrived, and were better off being treated as self-contained stories. On their own, the world's history and its main cast are totally worthwhile, but when woven together, I couldn't say I was personally all that impressed. There was a similar occurrence at an even smaller level, like Naya's surprise connection with some of her allies, which felt like add-ons to further their romantic involvement. While most of my grievances lie with the overall execution of the story, I enjoyed Matsurika in other ways. Matsurika has stellar world building. This isn't delivered exclusively through exposition or character interactions, but takes form through other diegetic means, like showing dishware with religious imagery, or having a little cart appear around a character if they're traveling. The world building is so meticulous and thoughtful that I quickly found myself immersed in the world from the jump. The routes were a mixed bag for me ultimately, but most of the allies had pretty solid stories. The smaller themes they each embodied were usually clearly conveyed, and part of that I attribute to the frequent inclusion of ally POVs, which would give better context to an ally's character. You know I have to highlight it. Endai and Teddy's relationship, oh my gosh. I have so much to say about them, I could make it an entire video of its own, but to keep it short without repeating myself, I loved the perseverance of their loyalty to one another despite it inherently being at odds with their roles in the grand scheme of history. By the end of both of their routes and the game, I think they fit the fated lovers bill better than Naya did with anyone. But historians will say they were just friends. Matsurika no Ke is a stunning game which boasts an intricate and fantastical world with a rich history and allies with diverse and even touching stories. Unfortunately, for me, the meshing of the two just didn't work. As a whole, I typically found myself disproportionately invested in the ally due to the little organic impact Naya had on the majority of the plot, which I only bump on since she is presented as a chosen one type character. There are certainly solidly delivered messages, but repetitious methods of conflict and messy execution of overall plot developments made lacking parts of the game hard to overlook. I can't deny that I really do hold a fondness for some of the allies, but still I must categorize the game as a personal disappointment. Again, please remember this is just my opinion. After all is said and done, I still support the Endai's heading OTP and dual baddie agenda. Thank you, good night. It's been a minute. First of all, thank you so much everyone for 100 subscribers. It means so much to me and makes me so happy that people are watching these very silly and self-indulgent videos. You're vindicating my shrimp posture when I edit and draw things for these. Feel free to comment on any potential videos you'd like to see outside of my Otome Rambles. As always, I have a coffee you can donate to if you'd like. Otherwise, I'm off to play, well, something. Bye bye!